for obvious reasons, with Representative Collins, and he can kind of start the presentation.
Okay. Good morning. I don't have really any planned remarks or presentation, just very briefly what committees I serve on in the area I represent. I know a lot of the folks here, but always good to see everybody and be up in Muscatine here. And as always, thanks for Muscatine Community College for hosting. Dr. Renfro, great to see you this morning. I serve on the State Government Committee, Natural Resources, Government Oversight, Appropriations. I chair the Higher Education Committee, but I live in Mediapolis, so about 45 minutes to the south here. But I have basically from the Burlington city limits up to the city limits of Muscatine here and kind of wrap around the city a little bit. And so my senator is Mark Lofgren, but I'll pass things off to Senator Gruenhagen. Thanks again for being here this morning.
Yeah, thank you. Wonderful to see all of you here today. Senator Kerry Gruenhagen, my district is 41. I have 4 townships in Muscatine County. I have all of Cedar County. I have Northwest Scott County and Northwest Davenport. I know the chart up there needs to be updated. My committees have changed slightly this year. We have a new Senate Majority Leader, and of course that brought along different committees. I am still chair of the Government Oversight Committee. I serve on Agriculture, Appropriations, Commerce, Education, and Ways and Means. And look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Bobby Kaufman, thank you for being here today. Muscatine's always one of our most engaging forums and the ones I look forward to the most. So thanks again to Muscatine Community College for being willing to host us for this great venue. My new role, I don't serve on committees anymore. My new role as Majority Leader is one that's taking some use to. For the last 10 years, I've chaired committees. I chaired the Government Oversight Committee and then State Government and then Ways and Means. Ran a lot of bills, ran a lot of big piece of legislation, no longer do any of that because my new role is Majority Leader of the House of Representatives. And what that means is all the committees, whether it's appropriations, tax stuff, policy, budgets, they all come to the Majority Leader's office, and it is my job to review them to see which bills should be brought up for a vote, which ones should be put in the garbage can, and which ones need amended. And so in that new role, I'm adjusting to what I'm used to for the last 10 years, but I'm finding that I'm enjoying having the ability to affect change for folks in our district at an even higher level. One thing I want to touch base on, but then I'm looking forward to all of your questions, is I need to remind folks that there's 150 legislators that are elected, and any one of us can come up with whatever bill we want on any topic for any reason without anybody else's permission. Every year, there's anywhere from 3,000 to 4,000 bills that get filed. Department bills, governor bills, Democrat bills, Republican bills, Senate bills, House bills, joint bills, there's all sorts of bills. The bottom line is only about 200 of them are actually ever considered to become law. So when some of you ask about bills that rightfully make the news and cause some concerns, just know that what one person sponsors does not necessarily mean an edict from the state. And so it's my job to sort those type of things out, and I'm looking forward to that challenge and looking forward to all of your questions.
Yes, Jeff Chow from Nichols. I'll ask a question what everybody wants to talk about, property tax reform. I know there's, you're talking about the bills, there's the governor's bill, the House bill, and the Senate bill. And that's my question for all three of you. I know there's a lot of similarities in the bills, but what do you think is kind of the sticking points or where you can come together to create one bill that everybody will sign off on?
The good news is, for the first time in my legislative career that I'm aware of, you have 3 bills from all 3 branches of government on property tax relief. You know, in the years past, tax bills have become end of session business because the Ways and Means Committee doesn't have any time restrictions the way that the policy committees do. You have to have some sort of a deadline to narrow those 5,000 bills down to 200, but the Tax Committee and the Appropriations Committee are not subjected to those rules. And so in years past, it's always been the last thing we do. This year, it's been one of the first things that we've done. There's some significant differences, but the bottom line is all 3 bills deliver major relief. There's some sticking points on how you handle one classification of people getting a break and then what that does with the balloon effect to others. You've got a revenue restriction in some, you've got revenue enhancers in some, you've got local government funding involvements in some. There are probably between all 3 bills, I'd say around 100 different moving pieces. So I won't have enough time to explain which ones I think are the best or the worst, other than the fact that I think you can see real relief and it's working its way through the process. I know we've already had 2 subcommittees, we'll probably have 2 more, and we're mostly focusing right now on public feedback.
We are coming out of a very high inflationary period where a lot of focus was also on property tax. even 3 years ago, is one of the number one issues. Knocking on doors, people are very concerned about that. And so we do have, well, now we have 4 plans that have been released in the legislature. The governor, the House, the Senate has one, and now Senator Cornbach has released one. He's simply defunding education and taking that money and applying it to property tax. I am glad to say that's probably not going. Okay, Duracell. All right. So one of the things the Senate plan does is removes that rollback and puts on an exemption of 50%. That allows the taxing entities to be able to plan their budget a lot better. And instead of having to go from year to year, they can reach out further, going 5 years, and that should be able to help some of the fluctuations in property tax that we're facing. Also, by age 60, if you are unencumbered on your home, if you own it outright, we believe that you should truly own it outright, and so the property tax is not applied to you unless it is a voted-in tax, like a special levy or something. You'll still be reliable to those, because if otherwise everybody would just vote yes on it if you don't have to pay the tax. So your basic tax, when you're 60, with the home paid off, you do not have to pay it. Thanks.
Well, as Carrie and Bobby shared, there's 3 plans that are out there. And what I've told folks is now is the time to provide feedback. You need to tell us the pieces you like, the pieces you don't like. I do think it's very encouraging that this early on, we're seeing 3 different bills rolled out in those first couple of weeks. That's very positive. I don't really want to wait until that last week to get this thing done. And also provides plenty of time for feedback throughout this process. But there's a lot of different ideas that are in those different bills. The Senate's bill is very comprehensive. I think there's some good ideas in there. I think there's some good ideas in the governor's bill. Just some things that they mentioned, the rollback, possibly doing away with that, or at least maybe locking it in, or maybe moving towards a 50% exemption for residential. I think that would simplify things. Looking at pretty much all the plans have a 2% cap annually. And really what that's intended to do is make sure that Iowa's property taxes don't continue to go up faster than their ability to pay, or faster than Iowa's income, or faster than Iowa's Social Security benefits, because that's unsustainable long term. And then also looking at some changes when it comes to bonding, just making sure we're taking that before the taxpayers, and those aren't just automatically passed on to residential homeowners. And then also, I think something interesting in the Senate bill was increasing the local option sales tax by 0.5%, and really giving communities the opportunity, if they want to shift some of the burden to a more user tax where it's more predictable. When you get your property tax bill, there's no option on paying that, right? At least with sales tax, if you can't afford things, you reduce your spending. And so many good pieces, I think, that are thrown out there. But as I've shared with the local folks, just please share feedback. I've heard some of that from the Muscatine folks so far. But I think we're in a very good spot, and the conversations are very productive as far as making some fundamental reforms to the system. But priority number 1 has to be certainty for the taxpayer, because I think those folks have gotten a backseat, really, when it comes to predictability for the government budget.
Good morning, honorable representatives. My name is Tony Sosa. I'm here with Muscatine Community College Young Democrats. Another member of ours is Anton DeBeat. And my question is regarding funds for MCC. First and foremost, I encourage you to support House Study Bill 533 without restrictions like pilot programs or distance rules that disqualify Muscatine Community College from being able to offer 4-year bachelor's degrees in high demand fields. I ask you, is it not better to keep those investments here at home? How can you ensure that Muscatine gets their seat at the table and Muscatine Community College receives stable funds?
So House Study Bill 533, that was my bill I introduced first week of session, allowing community colleges to offer bachelor's degrees, particularly in high demand fields. Based on the conversations we've had in my caucus, I don't think a wide open plan allowing it in any community college, really, including a DMAC in the middle of Des Moines, to offer that is going to get the support. And so when we passed that out of committee last week. I amended it so that it is only community colleges are at least 50 miles from another university. So that's a private college, that's a public university like a Regent school, and really what that's intended to do is specifically address the what I consider higher education deserts. And so that's a lot of southeast Iowa, particularly south of here, a lot of southwest Iowa, particularly if you're in the Council Bluffs area. We're losing a lot of kids to the Omaha metro because there's many different options for higher education over there, as well as some pockets of central Iowa. I know there's some folks at Fort Dodge who would really like to have those opportunities. What I would say is, and I would prefer it being wide open, right? But ultimately we have to get this thing across the finish line. It is the right thing to do for our workforce and our communities and our industry here. But we have to make sure we can get our foot in the door when it comes to these programs. And I think that this is a good starting place. That pilot program as amended would require the Department of Education, once that first cohort graduates from the first accredited bachelor's degree program, which keep in mind, these first programs probably are not going to start theoretically until 2028. Fall of 2028. And so really at least 2 years from there. So you're talking 2030. And then they would report back to the General Assembly as far as where we should go from there. But what I would say to the folks specifically fighting it, the private colleges, I think have been a little bit ridiculous when it comes to the talking points on this. And they talk about competition being a bad thing. Actually, competition is a pretty good thing, particularly when it comes to education. But I think this really addresses a high need area that we have in the state. And 24 other states have already done this. This isn't a crazy concept. This isn't a concept that's brand new. It has been tried. It works in those other states. And I think it ultimately would be a very good thing for the rural parts of a state of Iowa, including much of my district. So I'd love for Muscatine Community College to be involved in it long term, but ultimately we got to work through the legislative process and hopefully get this thing across the finish line in whatever form we can.
Well, I think that was a pretty good overview of the bill. I have not worked on that, but we are committed to working with our community colleges and helping to protect their funding. One source of that funding is from the public school system with the work-based learning as a working partnership, whether it's welding, teaching, nursing. Students in high school can actually start those careers early on in conjunction with the community colleges.
Well, Tony, I love your question, so thank you. I have fond memories of being on the campus here. People don't quite believe it, but John DeBeat and I are actually really good friends. And I founded the Muscatine Community College Republicans the same year the Muscatine Community College Democrats were founded. And we used to do joint fundraising events. We would grill hot dogs right out there together. If someone would come to me and say they were Democrat, I'd send them to you or vice versa, and we all worked together. It was fun. So I remember these days of prepping for these sessions, and great question. Community college funding, as far as I'm concerned, I think we're seeking ways to even get more funding than you're even asking for. And I say that because of the apprenticeship programs and the focus on workforce. In my belief, and I think largely the belief of bipartisan group of most legislators, that community colleges are the best bang for the buck. And so every dime I can get to invest in the Muscatine Community College, count on it happening.
Good morning. My name is John DeBeat. I live in Muscatine. And before I start asking the question, as usual, I will remiss if I don't wish everyone a happy Black History Month, as we all celebrate that this month. According to Iowa law, there are only 5 days remaining to set the SSA. My questions for you are very simple. What SSA rate are you prepared to accept and vote for? Furthermore, will you commit to a timely vote this year?
So the timely vote falls on me, John. So I guess we're not friends anymore. No, I'm just kidding. No, I would like to see the vote happen like 5 days ago instead of 5 days from now. And this response isn't for you, John, more for the crowd, because you know all of this. We're considering all the funding packages, all the categoricals. We're trying to push for more dollars into transportation equity, trying to push for more dollars for parapay, trying to push for more dollars for transportation, as well as the SSA number. You and I will disagree on what I'm about to say, but I want to tell folks, just remind you that over half our budget goes to education. Over half. That is the definition of a priority. As far as new money, the numbers being tossed around right now are roughly $60 million, which is approximately 2.25%. I think there is a consensus that 2% has been something we can afford, something we can be sustainable, something we can do. But my job is to try to push for those other categoricals on top of that.
Yeah, it's the SSA is just a small part of funding that does come from both state and federal dollars for the public schools. The Senate is coming out with a 1.75% increase, but in real money, it's $100 million of new taxpayer money. So that is a significant sum. The total sum of $4.3 billion, when you start talking percentages, they may sound small, but it's real taxpayer money that we're doing. Where would I come down? Well, we can't begin negotiations until we pass a bill. In the Senate, we are on track on passing that in time, and that's the purpose of putting a number out there so we can start negotiations. I do not believe that will be the final number. We do need, in my opinion, to increase that a bit, but we will see what we can negotiate when the bills pass.
You know, we're going to get it done as quickly as we can. Luckily, we have an excellent floor leader now from Eastern Iowa. But I think that the House Republican proposal is pretty consistent. It needs to be at least 2% sustainable. And it is an increase that's very significant when you consider the overall increase to the funding, because with it being about 45% of the state budget, 2% compounds very, very quickly. And as House Republicans, you know, we've been very good stewards of the state budget. We've ensured that there's not across the board cuts, because we have rampant increases and rampant downcreases when we saw control by the Democrats. In fact, the last time public education funding was cut, I like to remind a lot of folks, was under Governor Chet Culver, and that was a 10% across the board cut because he was incapable of managing the budget. And so I think we're going to see movement this week on the Senate side, and I hope the Senate takes it up very soon as well.
Hi, Bruce Barnhart. My question's on the fuel tax. I understand there's a proposal, maybe not necessarily to raise it, but to index it to something. I don't know whether that's inflation or something else, but I would be interested in your comments on that.
I believe that's included in the Senate property tax proposal because, and a lot of folks don't know this, but there is a significant amount of money through the gas tax that is distributed to counties, cities, to help pay for roads and infrastructure. And by basically indexing that, and I think there is a cap on that, it would make sure we're not going up by 10% like we saw under the Biden administration. I think it's capped at 3%. But just making sure that we have a tax system that is more on folks' ability to pay and less on property taxes, right? Because like the sales tax, the gas tax really is a sales tax on fuel. And if folks can't afford to pay more for fuel, they don't drive as much, right? And so we'll certainly consider that. I know there is some local governments that would support that because that is a good amount of their public works budget and a lot of the money that they put back into roads. So certainly something that we're going to have the conversation about.
Yeah, that certainly is in the property tax bill on the Senate side. What that is doing is tying it to the CPI of construction materials for roads and bridges to help that inflationary increase on that. Because, as you said, we went through the last Democrat administration, we had super high inflation to keep up with road repairs as the inflation increases. I guess that's designed to help do that. There are certain caps on that. You cannot increase it more than 3 years, and I think it's a 1% cap per year, pretty much. Am I a fan of raising tax? No, but we do need to protect our roads and bridges, so it is a part of the conversation.
Yeah, thank you for the question. That was one of the things I was discussing in the beginning comments about a revenue enhancer. I've had a lot of counties reach out to me and ask for this. If there's going to be a property tax a property tax cap, they've asked for what is a significant chunk of their budget, which is roads and bridges and gravel and snow removal and all those things, to be indexed so that it can keep up with inflation. And it's overall a part of a package. It's going to be a likely over many years $1 billion reduction. So I think it just makes sense to keep it in there.
One illustration, in Cedar County, I'm a Cedar County supervisor, we're bidding a bridge next month that 3 years ago, the estimated cost was $8 million. Right now, that cost is $16 million. So doubling the cost of one bridge in 3 years. That's how much that's eroding our road use tax dollars.
Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming this morning. My name is Pam Jocelyn. I am an educator for 33 years, a STEM educator. And employers tell us that the number one skill that they would like for tomorrow's workforce is the willingness to learn, the ability to adapt, solve problems, and tackle new challenges. But I want to talk about reality. When we see a 1.75% increase, funding increase, when inflation is running at 4 to 5%, and insurance costs are rising even faster, it's not an increase. It's actually a pay cut for teachers, and it's a budget cut for schools. Programs are going to be eliminated with that 1.75%. Class sizes will grow, and it will become nearly impossible to attract and retain teachers, especially in critical STEM areas like computer science, data science, engineering, and AI, when those professionals can earn over twice as much in the private sector. Iowa's future depends on investing in every single child, not just some. And so when we have these vouchers, they divert resources from public schools that serve every child to private schools. They deny certain students. They don't require certified teachers. And they also don't always have accountability. I would also like to invite you to my classroom anytime. As a DoD ambassador, as an Albert Einstein Distinguished Educator, alumni, a Fulbright alumni, I've had many opportunities to go throughout the country and all over the world. And I'm fortunate to have those opportunities for my students in my classroom. But doesn't every student deserve opportunities with the classroom with proper funding? And I thank you for your time, gentlemen.
Pam, first and foremost, thank you for the question and the respectful dialogue. I sincerely appreciate simple disagreements when there's respectful dialogue. So thank you for that. I respectfully reject that we're underfunding education. 50% of our budget, you can laugh all you like, but 50% of our budget is a very definition of a priority. I don't find education funding to be humorous. I'm not asking for your opinion, nor do you have the floor right now. Are you done yet? Are you done yet? Are you done yet? The rest of us would like to talk. Are you done yet? She is done yet. Okay. As I was saying, the definition of a priority is 50% of your budget going towards a particular funding source. And I need to respectfully push back like Senator Gruenhagen did against, well, this percentage means this. We're talking about a percentage of $4.6 billion. Comparing that to inflation is like comparing apples to oranges. They're not comparable. So it's the largest infrastructure investment that we have by far. There's nothing else even close. And secondly, the state of Iowa has never passed, nor does not have vouchers. That program does not exist.
Yeah, we spoke about school funding already. Don't need to rehash that. What I would like to point out is the number one concern that I am hearing from educators and from students, and it's not the funding, but it's simply student behaviors in the classroom and the ability to teach and have a safe environment in that classroom. I want to put a shout out to House File 2044, which puts control of the classroom back in the hands of the teacher, so they determine when that child is ready to come back into the classroom and not the administration. It's the teacher that has to work with them. So we are working to improve the learning environments inside those classrooms. Thank you.
I think that's my bill, actually. So there you go. Thank you for that. And I actually share Senator Gruenhagen's thought here. That is the number one concern I hear from parents is simply student behaviors, and that has to be dealt with. When it comes to education funding, I don't think we need to rehash that. But when it comes to inflation, it's a major issue, right? We're all dealing with it. Taxpayers are dealing with it. And we can't pass every inflationary increase onto the taxpayer. And number one, when it comes to the concerns about inflation, that's why I voted for Donald Trump.
Good afternoon. Good morning, legislators. Thank you all for serving, and congrats to Bobby in a leadership role. Speaking of Pam Joslin, it's not been announced, but she has been designated as the top STEM teacher in the state of Iowa. So,
Congratulations.
absolutely. So I'm here today thinking about the clean water issues and encouraging you to support the Natural Resources Trust Fund. If there's a water issue, if there's a trails issue, if there's wildlife issues, if you vote for the Natural Resources Trust Fund in this one vote, you'll address all of these issues. And this, through I Will, was passed by 62% of our voters. And our environment is very important, so I know Bobby has supported in the past, but I hope the rest of you would do it and encourage your colleagues to do it, because our environment and clean water is going to what keep us alive and thriving. Thank you.
When it comes to Iowa, I think that in order for folks in Des Moines to support that, we're probably going to have to look at really redoing how that funding was set up. It's been quite a few years. In fact, I probably was in high school when that passed. And I know that before the pandemic, the governor actually had a bill to try to really look at how that money would be redistributed if we triggered the Iowa Trust Fund. And so it's a conversation I'm willing to engage in. Also, when it comes to increasing the sales tax, I'm just hesitant to do so without a portion of that going to either property tax relief or income tax relief, because I want to make sure that if we're going to raise taxes, we are lowering other taxes. Sales tax, I'm not necessarily against, because again, it is a user tax, but income taxes and property taxes, that is something I continue to hear from a lot of folks that we needed to make a continued progress on that. We've made incredible progress on income taxes. We need to keep working on property taxes.
Well, as Representative Collins has noted, that was a long time ago that was put in there, and it was never funded. But in the meantime, there are a lot of different sources of funding that have been created. I'm looking at $80 million that went into water quality here in the state of Iowa in the last year. And so if we were to enact that, we'd simply have to go back into the budget and redo all of those funding sources as it goes. So we have worked around that, and so I do believe we have done it quite a bit. But I do appreciate the question. Water quality is a top priority of our legislature.
Where'd you go? There you are. Good to see you, Sarah. All of our conversations we've ever had stand. I'm happy to stand by what I've said publicly with you. I continue to have conversations with Johnson County. My 10 years representing them, I both have fond memories and not so fond memories. And one of the things I was always upset with them about is I felt that some folks in Johnson County acted in bad faith when it comes to that very law and what people voted for, with this whole notion of using taxpayer dollars to take high CSR ground and compete against other farmers. That was never your goal, never my goal, never anybody's goal. So I think working on the formula and making sure that voters' intent is actualized, along with working with the programs that already exist, is potentially the pathway forward, and I'll continue to look for one.
My name is Terry Behrensmeyer, and I'm from Davenport. And in Iowa, once a law is passed, unelected bureaucrats within our state agencies can write rules to carry it out without further approval from legislature. There are some conversations around passing a law that requires any new rule with a significant cost to taxpayers must be approved by the legislature. Would you support that change? And
Is that an Americans for Prosperity bill?
the REINS Act?
Oh, the reins. Yes. Okay. I know what you're talking about. So first of all, I've never had a question like that. So thank you. Fantastic question. One of the most frustrating things I've dealt with in my time as a legislator is exactly what you're talking about. We can pass a law all we want. It doesn't matter whether Democrats are in charge, Republicans are in charge. It doesn't matter who the governor is. The governor appoints heads of DNR, heads of DOT, heads of the courts, heads of all these different organizations, and they have rulemaking authority. They have interpretation authority. They have sometimes legal authority, and don't always act in conjunction with our intentions. And so I've had conversations with people about that act. I think it's a fantastic idea. We had to pass another one similar to it 5 years ago because there's a thing called the Rules Committee, and we can put a concept out there requiring that these cups be black now. Well, they don't just magically turn black. They have to go through the organizations. They have to have rules written for them. Then the implementation, they're four up. Organizations were just simply ignoring it. And I'm sorry, I don't care whether Democrats are in charge or Republicans are in charge. When we pass a law, then that's the way that it is. The voters elected us to do that. And it's not unelected people's job to circumvent that. So I would completely, fully support it. And I would even go further.
That is one of the items that got me involved in politics. You know, a bureaucracy setting the rules instead of the legislature. It essentially becomes the fourth branch of government, as they're unaccountable and setting the rules in a legislature that allows them to do so. So yes, I would stand strong for something like that.
Very supportive of that. I look forward to that bill coming out. And as Bobby shared, it does not matter who's in charge. You have Even with Republicans in charge in the governor's office for some time, you have seasoned bureaucrats who've been there for 25, 30 years who want to impose their agenda really outside of the will of the elected representatives who've sent us there. It's totally inappropriate. We need to make sure we hold the bureaucracy accountable and really strengthen the rules process, as Bobby said, because that is so key. We're really laypersons here. None of us are attorneys. Well, I guess Walter was, but a lot of us pass bills, and we don't feel like we need to go to the exact detail a lot of the time. And a lot of that's figured out then in rules. And a lot of us have taken the approach now of, no, we want exactly what we want in code now because we simply can't trust the rules process through the agencies. And so if we can address that issue by making sure that there's really a check or a veto by the legislature and folks, elected representatives, I think that's incredibly important. So thank you for your question.
My name's Carrie Dalby. I'm a public educator, as that's my career, specializing in advocating for students with disabilities and English language learners. My question is, if we have declining enrollment throughout our state, our budget total for public education is actually decreasing because you're not having as many students that you have to fund. We've listened to you talk about a number of areas in the budget where you believe that they should have budget increases that are in line with inflation. Can you please talk about how you prioritize what you feel should be allowed budget increases that match inflation and what you feel should be otherwise considered?
I think there's quite a few questions later, but I think I already addressed that as far as inflationary increases, right? We can't pass every inflationary increase on to the taxpayer. When it comes to SSA and school enrollment, the demographic trends we're seeing as a state and as a country are very concerning. We quite frankly are not having enough children, and I'm doing my part, but we just had a little one 8 months ago. But when we see really our population going down over the long term, it hurts everything, right? It hurts particularly our schools because everything is enrollment driven. I'm not saying we should move away from enrollment driven, right? But really what we're seeing in rural Iowa is very concerning when it comes to population trends. And so when it comes to your question about the budget actually going down, it would go down if we didn't increase SSA. But we are going to increase SSA like we have every single year since the Republicans have had the majority.
So as I mentioned, 100 million new taxpayer dollars into education with a declining enrollment. So you have an increase with fewer students. And so the money follows the student here in the state of Iowa with the SSA. So imagine if that was true, you're cutting it, you would not be having that increase. We are doing our best to attract people to the state of Iowa with our 3.8% flat rate. We're doing our best to encourage people to reproduce. We send Taylor home every Friday. And I will stop at that.
On that note, see you guys later. No, I'm just kidding. I've answered this question 3 different ways. We just disagree on how the wording is. If you look at, not every school's got a cookie cutter problem. I've got 2 schools in my district that are exploding in growth. I've got the city of school in Durant that has more students than they've ever had before. And so there's not an approach. We can't force students to go to certain school districts, and the money follows that. But we are continuing. It's not a debatable fact that we have increased education funding every year. It's not a debatable fact that it's over half of our budget, and it's not a debatable fact that it's our top priority. Those are just the facts.
I'm Cindy Zonizer from Scott County, and this is based on the gas tax question. Do you believe tax increases should gas tax increase automatically be debated openly instead of being debated openly? I'm sorry.
Can you restate the question, please? Sorry.
Okay. Do you believe tax increases should require a vote by elected officials every time? And why should gas tax increases increase automatically instead of being debated openly?
We're planning on voting on it. As far as indexing is a pretty standard form of government, and there's restrictions on it. I guess I just don't share your concerns. We as elected officials are going to vote for sure, be transparent. And then indexing is a normal thing that's in private business and government and everything. So I guess I respectfully don't share your concerns.
I do appreciate that question. I do understand your concern about an automatically increasing tax. That is part of the conversation right now. The other thing is your inflation increases rather quickly and the legislature moves rather slowly. So in 3 years, when you go from $8 million for a bridge to $16 million, if you have to legislate that, it could be 10 years before you get that done. And then we all fall behind on our infrastructure. So that's part of the reasoning. It is open for conversation though. So thank you for making that point.
I mean, I just share the same things that they've shared. We're going to continue to openly debate this process. We talked about it here today, and there'll be a subcommittee and committee process and debate on the floor like any other bill.
Phil Weiss from Muscatine County. Bobby, brace yourself. I'm going to compliment you on something. You've made it abundantly clear where you stand over the last 2 years on eminent domain in the pipeline. I have no question that you're against that pipeline. So my question for the other two is, will you, when it comes to a full vote, will you oppose the CO2 pipeline using eminent domain without any loopholes, with no exceptions?
I didn't get to hear my compliment yet.
You made the point very clear that you're against the use of eminent domain, which I appreciate. There's no vagueness. There's no question that where you stand on that issue, and I appreciate that. And the other two, I guess I haven't been able to hear clarification. So just, are you against the use of eminent domain for that pipeline without loopholes or exceptions?
Well, one, as we mentioned, we do have to get a bill through the Senate, and really have not gotten one through that has gotten to the governor. So as part of the legislative process, it has to go through the House. It comes over to the Senate. And so we're working to get a bill through on that in the Senate. There was a bill, we could not move that, so we're using that for a vehicle to get something through, and after that it goes over to the House, and then we have to work with the governor's office to come to some sort of agreement. What that agreement is going to be, we do not know. Last year I did support a very comprehensive landowner rights bill that included no eminent domain for CO2 pipelines. I voted with the majority of Republicans to move that bill in the Senate. Unfortunately, it failed, but it included land restoration rights, so lifetime tile repair. It literally covered every concern out there. Yield loss. It gave landowner real rights, and where the landowner rights fell off, they could go to the County Board of Supervisors and appeal to them and get a actual person on the ground to make sure things are doing right. So we have supported robust landowner protections, but we do not know what we can get through. So we are trying to move a bill through that will go to the House and commence the conversation or continue the conversation.
Will you allow eminent domain though? That was the question. Will you say like Bobby? Bobby has made it very clear, no eminent domain for private gain.
That is a second question, and that's a twosie. And I think I answered that question when I stated rather lengthily of what we supported last year.
Yeah, I've supported the bills led by Representative Kaufman each year, and I'll continue to do so. I think really the issue is not the debate about whether the pipeline is good or bad. We can have that debate, right? The question is whether an economic development project should qualify for eminent domain. And I just really worry about the precedent that sets. Is the next thing we're going to allow eminent domain for a shopping mall? Is the next thing we're going to allow eminent domain for solar panels and wind turbines? And so that's where I'm at on the issue. I think that we need to find some resolution this year. I think it's positive. We're seeing movement in both chambers on it, and I hope we can take the steps necessary to protect landowners and our farmers. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Sarah Hickey, and I'm from Muscatine. And first of all, I'd like to thank you all for serving in the legislature and for being here today and giving us an opportunity to talk with you. I'm concerned about the proposed bill that would eliminate the longstanding requirement that children be vaccinated in order to attend public school. Vaccines have been required since 1977. Medical professionals across the board, including the Iowa Medical Society, the American Academy of Pediatrics, as well as hospitals, county governments, and public health organizations, all support vaccine requirements and oppose this proposed bill. Listen to the recommendations of the medical professionals, please. Those who want to eliminate the vaccine requirement claim that vaccine requirements infringe on parental rights. But is that really true? Current law allows parents to obtain religious and medical exemptions to the vaccine requirements. Parents are also free to homeschool their children. Current law gives parents choices. It just doesn't give them unlimited choices. And no law does. As you know, as leaders of government, your job is to balance and support public welfare and individual rights. The current law walks that balance. It does that. It's done it since 1977. Iowa is an agricultural state, and we have laws requiring vaccines for livestock. Pets must be vaccinated in order to attend pet daycare, be boarded overnight, or participate in activities at the local dog park. Don't our children deserve at least the same quality protections our pets and livestock receive? So I'm asking you, please vote no on any bill that seeks to eliminate the school vaccination requirements.
I have not seen that bill yet, so I'll take a look at it. But I just think, generally speaking, when it comes to vaccines, I think parental consent is very important. That's the only strong position I have on that issue.
Yeah, I think that is a House bill. I don't know what prompted that. I don't know anything about that bill, so I will pass it on to Bobby here.
All right. First and foremost, I just want to, I will address your question here in just a moment, but I just want to go back to the last question and just state that since I didn't take time to answer it, in the eminent domain debate, there's been one disappointment I've had, and then I promise I'll answer your question. It's not that Senator Gruenhagen hasn't voted for property rights, because he has. It said House Democrats voted against property rights, abandoned property rights for the first time in 4 years. I used to count on all their votes, good friends, and 22 of them decided to back the unions for the money. And that was their argument on the floor. So that's been my biggest frustration. As far as your question, in the beginning, I talked about bills that typically may not have large swaths of support. And there are many members of my caucus that are very passionate about this issue. I'm passionate about parental rights. As far as just removing vaccine mandates in schools, I have had a very large proportion of people come to me opposed and concerned over those that have come wanting it. So I would suspect that the public education that everybody is pushing for is working, is my way of answering that.
Thank you for that. I don't see a long line behind me, so I'm going to take a little bit of a twofer. What I appreciate very much, Representative Collins, that you are in favor of parental consent and parental rights for things. But again, we have to have that balance between the general welfare and individual rights. And I could use your argument to ask you to eliminate any law that's here in the state. I could say to you, I think my child should be able to drive 100 miles an hour down Colorado Street. And you're laughing because that's a ridiculous example, and I know that. But we have to say, for the public welfare, for the students of MCC, for the people who reside on this street, for the people who have businesses on this street, for the little kids at the Muskie Early Learning Center across the street, we set a reasonable limit. We listen to the professionals and we set a reasonable speed limit. Where my individual rights come in is I'm welcome to pursue race car driving as a hobby or as a profession. So my individual rights are still met, but we also protect the public good.
And I want to thank you for exercising those individual rights, because this is exactly what the committee process is made for. People put out thousands of bills. People are passionate, articulate, respectful. I'm hearing you, I'm listening, and there's a lot of you out there saying the exact same thing.
Thanks for outing me, Walter.
I didn't know you were a lawyer.
Short crowd and small crowd in here. Yeah, most of the time we talk about utility business, not my first profession, which was lawyering, but I still do it on the utility side. And I am here to add my Brandy Olson. I'm a resident of the city of Muscatine, and despite not seeing our city of Muscatine representatives here, I do appreciate that you all made the drive in and you've made the commitment to answer questions. I do want to ask, there are numerous bills that are introduced at this point, and I am well aware of the volume, that there are numerous bills that could impact utility and utility development across the state. We've talked a little bit about pipelines, and I think you're all aware that we shouldn't mix up the CO2 pipeline issues with the need to further develop natural gas access throughout the state, because we do have regions of the state where there are deserts. There is no natural gas pipeline. We're lucky here in our part of the state where that's a resource we can tap into, but that's not in Northwest Iowa and some other places. So we don't want that to get mixed up. in that debate, but what bills will you be advocating for that will help support utilities and utility development and reliable baseload generation that's needed in the state as we move forward?
Blindly suck up a little bit. I'm going to say that I'm going to vote for the bills that you tell me are good. I'm going to vote for the bills that Kirk Trady and REC tell me are good. I'm going to vote for the bills that the utilities who are educated on the topic and know the ins and outs. I don't pretend to know what moving lever X in the utility law does to lever Y. You do. And that's my MO when it comes to industry experts on most things. And so I would just encourage you to let us know which bills are bad and which bills are good, because that's how I try to treat things. And I did not know that you were a lawyer.
After all these years?
I'm considering suing Senator Gruenhagen, so let's talk afterwards.
I can give you a referral. I have one client, and that's Muscatine Power and Water.
Well, you mentioned a shortage of natural gas, and that is very real, and particularly in southeast Iowa. One bill that I do have is anaerobic digesters that both the House members have passed last year. To put regulations in place so that can be also a community digester. It is my intention to place community digester with that bill, which deals with agricultural digesters. And what that does is they put waste into a tank, basically, to process it, and they can pull natural gas off of it and put it directly into our natural gas supply. So it's really a fantastic idea, to create that source. So it's not just animal waste, it's also food processing waste. West Liberty Foods does not put items into the landfill. They send it to a anaerobic digester and they create a actual fuel out of that. So it is a very interesting idea to keep moving with that.
I won't hold it against you, Randy, if you're an attorney.
He says it's like it's an allegation and not true.
Certainly, I don't sit on Commerce, but certainly watching all the bills that Representative Young is working on. I know he introduced quite a few that first week, and so really watching to see what his committee is working on. When it comes to energy policy, in my short-term tenure in Des Moines, it seems like there's honestly more bad energy bills than there is good ones. And so maybe more important than that is to make sure those bad ones don't come up for a vote. Those bills that ultimately will pass on more cost increases to the consumer. We want to make sure that that does not become law in the state of Iowa. And I think that we've done a successful job of making sure that's the case, because you look across the river right now to Illinois, they're seeing huge increases in their utility bills because really they have prioritized ideology ultimately over the costs that consumers have to pay. And so just keep us apprised, not just you, but Kirk as well when it comes to energy policy. There's a lot of discussion about that. And honestly, always open to more ideas when it comes to natural gas. We not only have a shortage in Northwest Iowa, we have a shortage down in Southeast Iowa. We really are lucky to have Muscatine Power and Water up here. It's a result of really, because we have Muscatine Power and Water, we've landed a lot of projects up here, but because we have a natural gas shortage to the south, it really limits our ability to grow. And so that's a problem long term. We need to be looking for solutions.
Hi, my name is Mark Hines. I'm the CEO of Crossroads and Senior Resources. So we provide home and community-based services here in Muscatine and in Tipton. I'm here to ask about House Study Bill 621. So this is actually a continuation of a bill that Taylor, you put up last year. What this would do is provide providers like us with a stable reimbursement rate mechanism. So currently what happens every year, we come to the legislature hat in hand, hopefully with data that HHS has provided with us to say, here's what our costs are and here's what we would need for X, Y, or Z service line to survive. And those are based on, those hedge on the possibility that Appropriations Committee will say yes. So it is a very unpredictable way to run our business, to run our services, and to make sure that we can continue to care for some of the most vulnerable Iowans in our state. House Study Bill 621 would allow for a biennial rate review. So the state would, or HHS would provide recommendations to the legislature based on cost reporting that we have to do every year that seems to just disappear into the ether. And they would also benchmark against states around us. Would you support this bill? And I guess more broadly, do you support the services that providers like Crossroads give to our communities?
Mark, good to see you. Thank you for your question. Obviously, I support it because I introduced a similar bill last year, but I think there's been very good conversations with the HHS committee on that. Representative Harris, who's the new HHS chair, he's very tuned into what you guys are working on this year. Not only that, but really right to work and some other things that are really important.
I have visited senior assisted living in my district, and I am aware of some of the challenges. So I do appreciate you bringing up that question. Anything that would help stabilize it, is worth looking at. And I hope this continues to become a part of the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you for the. Where'd you go? There you go. Thank you for the question. I've been looking up the bill so I can answer it intelligently. It looks like House Study Bill 621 is being chaired by Ann Meyer. Is that correct? She's the Health and Human Services chair. That's a good sign. Chairs don't assign bills to themselves that they don't want to become law. I see that on February 5th, it passed the subcommittee and is recommended for full committee passage. And I'm looking at the lobbyist declarations here. It's quite impressive. Those that are for Iowa Behavioral Health Association, the Ellipsis Organization, Iowa Medical Society, Iowa Developmental Disabilities Council, just a really good group of organizations that are for it. I didn't see a single person against it. My new role, I can't just guarantee things anymore because I have to deal with 67 other people that have to say yes and then have to deal with the Senate. But it seems to me, that's a joke, it seems to me that when you have the floor manager of the Health and Human Services Committee running a bill herself and nobody opposed, that it's got some pretty damn good chances, and certainly I won't stand in the way. And thank you for what you do in Tipton. Amazing organization for a lot of families that tell me how good of a job you do.
Good morning. My name is Karen Cooney. I'm a resident of Muscatine. I'm also on Muscatine District School Board. And this is just a little bit different take on your explanation and such on what we're looking at, the 1.75% or more that we may be able to get and such. I can tell you that there are about 159 schools that would end up being on budget guarantee if this is going to be within those lower amounts. If it's not on the 3% or higher, you'll find that there'll end up being even more schools within the districts, within the state, that'll be on budget guarantee. And I just found out this week that that includes big schools, including in Des Moines, Iowa. So it's not just a little school of problem area here. It is across the state of Iowa. Can you explain for folks what that means by being on a budget guarantee and what that does and where that money then comes from?
It would take me about 20 minutes to fully fund to fully discuss the entire educational funding pipeline, because you've got a property tax component, you've got the budget guarantee component, which has to do with state funding. And when the per pupil enrollment is not what it's supposed to be and the dollars aren't there, then the budget guarantee kicks in to make sure the lights can stay on. That's the condensed, commercialized version of it. But again, I very respectfully, you asked the question very respectfully. I treat people how I'm treated, so I very much appreciate this. But I have to respectfully reiterate, I'll appeal to you if you think about your retirement. I'll appeal to you if you have a Roth IRA. When you have compounding numbers, they grow rapidly. When you're dealing with a $4.6 billion base fund, just tossing around numbers like 1.75 versus 3%, we're talking about $100 million in difference. We're talking about the entire funding system for the courts. Sarah, we're talking about every dime we use on water quality funding. So I respectfully reject the percentage argument and will continue to talk about the overall dollar argument, because that to me is something that is apples to apples instead of apples to oranges.
When we look at education funding in total as a whole, 58% of our budget, I believe that does show that it is a priority. We are committed to having a consistent increase. It is a little bit lower than what everybody would like. We understand that. We are doing all we can to help keep funding public schools. We do have a lot of categoricals. I'm going to point to the TSS. We passed a law that made our teachers the 5th highest paid starting pay in the country. Right? So that money is not part of the SSA. That money is coming through on the TSS. So there are many categoricals other than the SSA, but it's simply an easy target politically because, well, you're going to pull a small percentage and talk about that. But there are a lot of other categoricals that go along with it that do not get talked about. Thank you.
Yeah, so budget guarantee is just another mechanism in the very complicated school funding formula we have here. And really it's designed when enrollment's going down. And a budget guarantee is not the result of SSA, because you could increase SSA by 5-10% in some of these districts, and there still could possibly be on budget guarantee because of declining enrollment. Again, this goes back to the population problem we have. We have an enrollment problem in a lot of these districts. And so what budget guarantee allows them to do is, as elected school board members, you can choose to increase property taxes to increase the budget despite educating less students the year before. And so really, we have to look at this holistically when it comes to why districts are going on budget guarantee, and it's because of declining enrollment. I'm going to butcher this number here, but I believe we have 10,000 less kids going into kindergarten this year than are graduating, and that's very concerning long term. But if we see less students, ultimately, we're going to have to right-size our budgets to an extent.
Follow up along with that, then the percentage of what the voucher gets for their amount of increase is totally based in a different category?
The ASA program goes up by the exact same percent as SSA. If that was your question.
Jean Goshi from West Branch. And regarding the schools, I'll just say, as someone who's had in the public schools own experience with extremely poor performance and having to teach my own children to read, I think looking at performance is very, very important. So I just want to say that. My other comment has to do with our behavioral health services, and I do not know the answers, but I will tell you again, I'm having personal experiences. I am basically running a 24/7 inpatient residential facility in my home because there's not a lot available here in Iowa. I cannot find psychiatric help. We are on waiting lists, and we have gone out of state and spent a lot of money. Some of it was well spent. Some of it was completely a ripoff. And I don't know. I think I need to get more involved with HHS, but I will just tell you that there are so many gaps in what we're doing with behavioral health. And I suspect that there are many people suffering out there because we haven't really thought about how we're providing those services. And I hope to help on that someday.
Thank you for your thoughts. Just generally speaking, when it comes to behavioral health, if you ever have trouble with placement or things like that, please reach out to us because we can cut through the bureaucracy pretty quick when it comes to. No, there's not, and there's a lack of workforce, and that's been the top priority for us, is really making sure that we have the workers to provide those services. A lot of the times we have the available beds, but we don't have the people to staff those beds. And so one thing we've been working on is expanding the number of psychiatric positions at the University of Iowa hospitals. We have continued work to do.
Yes. And as a healthcare executive and a lawyer, it is abysmal, the lack of services we have here in Iowa. We're almost the worst in the country, if not the worst. And I say that as a fiscal conservative who knows healthcare very well.
Yep. Thank you for bringing that to our attention and the attention of everyone. That's what this forum is for, is to bring up important issues like that. We do know that we do need more work on our mental health services. Any sheriff department or police department will tell you that there are people that are in the jail simply because it could be a mental health issue and there's really no other way to allocate them. And we do need to find a better method to improve on that.
So, Gene, thank you for your question. It's a fantastic question. You're exactly right. One of my biggest frustrations based on our conversations has been when the federal government hands down edicts that go along with attachments to their behavioral health, their mental health, their HHS dollars, their Medicaid, Medicare dollars. That's exactly right. And what drives me crazy is that for the longest time, behavioral outcomes were taking a back seat to ideological goals in Washington, D.C. Thank God those days are over. And so we have some more flexibility. We don't get a pot of money and all of a sudden your hands are tied and you can only help somebody with a disability if you're satisfying some imaginary quota based on political groups. And so thankfully those days are over. Another thing that excites me is the governor applied, if you probably saw, the $230-some million that was available for federal grants for rural healthcare. A lot of those dollars can be used for bed expansions and provider reimbursement increases. And Ann Meyer, who was helping him with the Crossroads bill, is also putting forth bills that don't just add more beds, but also add more rate and reimbursement for providers so you can actually do your job and not be handcuffed by both the state and the federal government. I don't have all the answers, but that's my snapshot on what we're trying to do on a 20,000-foot view.
Okay, I'm Paul Adams. I currently live in Manchester. I used to live in Stanwood. talking about when they're raising the fuel tax, that need to also state that's in the Iowa Constitution that the only money raised in fuel tax can only go for public roadways. And a lot of people I've talked to, they said I have no objection raising the fuel tax as long as the money's going for roads. So, like you and Bobby used to even say that, actually he called it a tax cut because it could help with pressures on property taxes. If more of your local roads money comes from user fees, like fuel tax, that would be like a user fee. So like, there's no problem raising the fuel tax as long as the money's going for roads, which is mandated by the Iowa Constitution.
Well, Paul, first of all, thank you for being here. I still get your letters every week and I still appreciate them. So please keep them coming. I actually look forward to them. I remember back in 2015 that we were having this debate up at Ditto's in Stanwood. And I did argue that my vote back then was a tax cut, and it was a tax cut because it takes pressures off of property taxes. And I would rather have somebody pay for something they use than something they don't. And so putting fuel and roads and infrastructure solely on the backs of property taxes and not on the users is a poor way of doing it, in my personal opinion. I also think when you've got roads that are so terrible that you're going to have a guaranteed $1,000 bill for simply driving on them, but you could pay $100 in extra fuel tax to be able to take care of that, you're also getting a $900 personal income tax cut. So I argue passionately that this is the way to go. Obviously, I voted for it and I'm going to stand by it. And Paul makes an excellent point. The fuel tax is not one of those funds that the government can just stick their fingers in. If it was, I'd be a hell no. It's a fund that is constitutionally protected. You are literally forbidden by law from using a dime for anything other than roads and bridges. It's one of the most secure funds in the state of Iowa, and that's why I support that as a broader property tax discussion of lowering your taxes.
Yeah, thank you for making that point. Money that is collected for roads from the gas tax do stay in the road fund. So that is a very important distinction, and I do appreciate you bringing that point out.
Thank you for your question. I think it's just a great example of really look at the state of Illinois, and the legislators over there raided the road fund this year to bail out the Chicago transit system. That will never happen in the state of Iowa. It constitutionally cannot happen. And so we're going to make sure those dollars go to where they were intended to go. Thank you for your question.
Ken Brooks with Crossroads and Senior Resources here in Muscatine and Tipton. Want to thank you for being here this morning. I appreciate it. House File 2017 would create a state workforce opportunity tax credit that mirrors the federal credit. So I wanted to touch base quickly on that with you three this morning. Crossroads both places individuals with disabilities in positions with local businesses and hires some of these same participants in our own facilities through our supported employment program. These individuals are exactly the population that this credit is designed to support. So the first part of the question is, do you support House File 2017? And then how do you see it fitting into Iowa's workforce strategy for employing people with significant barriers to work while supporting employers who step up and hire them?
We just have Bobby cruising the legislative website here because we got a few thousand bills to cruise through. I have not seen that one yet. I'll certainly take a look at it after you mentioned it. Thank you for your question.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that to our attention. I'll be looking for that. House File 217. That is over in the House, of course. I don't know if there's a companion bill in the Senate for that. One of the biggest challenges is labor for assisted living. And so we would look forward to any plan that would help that.
Ken, thank you for the question, and same with him. Thank you for the great work in Tipton. I can't tell you the number of families that give you compliments without you even knowing it. House File 2017 is sponsored by Chad Ingalls. Looking through the organizations that are for it, you've got the Association of Community Providers, Catholic Conference, Motor Truck Association, Brain Alliance, Greater Des Moines Partnership. You've got a lot of folks that are pushing for this, and not that I can see anyone that is opposed to it. So again, I can no longer be the person that commits to, I will get this bill through because I don't serve on committees anymore. But I can tell you I don't see any initial red flags. And then I'll just share my personal experience with you. Probably the worst day of my legislative career was when I was government oversight chair, and we had an oversight hearing about a little girl with severe behavioral disabilities that was stuck in the system, stuck in every system that everybody's talked about today. And she was one of those that would receive her adopted parent, or excuse me, her guardian parents, who are not her parents, were in the system as one of those that could receive a significant stipend for taking care of somebody with severe disabilities. And the girl was I think 11 or 12 years old, and they found her at 36 pounds dead in her caretaker's basement, while the family had spent the money that was supposed to be used to take care of her to go to Disney World. Those people are sick monsters, and they're in jail right now. And so these topics, while it just hits close to home from my experience in this universe. And so anything we can do, like with Gene's question on the rural funds and getting those dollars directed your way, I'm always going to push for that.
Great. Thank you very much. Good morning. My name is Quinn Reese. I'm the sheriff here in Muscatine. I don't have a question. I'm just going to ask for your consideration and support on both Senate File 2022 and 23 as they relate to the 911 surcharge money. I know those are coming up for, I believe, subcommittee Monday or Tuesday. I would ask for your consideration and support of those changes. Second, and I will kind of follow up on the mental health angle here a little bit. I believe there's a bill to expand those long-term mental health beds. I would ask for the support for that. I would argue that I probably am responsible for more mental health cases than some facilities around the state, as far as the jail is concerned. It is a revolving issue where we see the same people over and over and over again, and just because there's not those facilities, those beds available. So I would ask for your support with that as well.
First of all, Sheriff, thank you for being here. I have not seen 2022 and 2023, but I don't think I've ever voted against the Sheriff's Association. So if you guys are in favor of it, I'm sure I will be as well. As far as the long-term health beds, I do know a little bit more about that. I keep bringing her name up here. She's from Fort Dodge, but Ann Meyer is chairing the budget on health and human services, and she's cheerleading that bill to increase those long-term beds. It's one of her top priorities. So I've always argued that, just like I argued that the fuel tax is a tax cut, I argue that investing in mental health is saving the state money long-term because you're helping folks on the front end instead of waiting till the disaster's on the back end. So your point is extremely well taken.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for bringing those to my attention. Simply have not seen those yet. We have a lot of bills crossing our desk right now, and so I do appreciate that. Thank you.
Same thing as them, Quinn. I'll be looking for that, and I'm open to changes on that. I don't really like where we landed on that last year. I don't like that we didn't have a ton of time to discuss it. Yeah.
Good morning, Kirk Tritty for Eastern Iowa Light and Power. We already had one utility question, so I'll do kind of another one. I don't think the general public is aware of the generation shortage that there is in this region and how close we came to having real generation capacity availability.
Counties that have basically said they're closed for business as far as having generation facilities through
moratoriums or citing setbacks that make it impossible to put solar or wind on a commercial scale, utility scale in their counties. Our power supplier SIPCO is trying to build a generation facility in Scott County. It's going to be voted down by the Board of Supervisors next week, apparently, and they don't feel they need energy in Scott County. They've said they don't have a problem. There's no shortage, but they don't, Scott County does not have any generation facilities in it that are up and running to my knowledge, so they don't produce any. Given the fact on that county by county, we're being shut down as far as putting generation facilities in, but we have a huge need for them. I guess, what do you see the state's role in eventually coming up with some sort of state siting? And this isn't an eminent domain thing. There's the facility in Scott County has an individual willing to sell the property, and it's where it needs to be, where a transmission line crosses a natural gas line. For low cost as far as infrastructure, perfect place to put it, but we're being told no.
statewide side, and you're probably going to hear a wider range of opinions on that. I don't think I can support it for solar or wind. Obviously, I think I have a lot of constituents that would like that to be figured out at the local level. When it comes to like a natural gas peaker plant, things like that, that's essential energy infrastructure that we need. And so I would be open to that conversation. We got to stop shutting down the existing coal plants we have. We have to make sure we're allowing capacity for these natural gas peakers because we have a need. I saw those same notifications you did in the MISO region when it came to the rolling blackouts we could potentially have. That's a major problem. And so we got to address that long term.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that to the attention of everybody. So MISO did issue an alert back when we were at 0 degrees for a high for an extended period of time, and they were threatening to shut down electric because we were running short. There were, to my understanding, there are 2 peaker plants over on the Missouri River. Missouri River, if you notice, is ice right now, but that is what they use to cool those plants. So they're in extreme danger of shutting those plants down, to my understanding. So like a natural gas peaker plant would not be subject to something like that. And so, yes, we do have serious energy concerns. At the same time that was all happening, when it was 0 degrees out, there was an event held up in, I believe it was up in Eldridge, against this plant. There were a lot of Democrat candidates and Democrat elected officials up there joining them in trying to shut this down. But we have to simply ask, while we would like it to be a local issue, where do you want to get your power from? And so we do need to have that question on exactly how we are going to produce energy before it's too late and we start seeing rolling blackouts, rolling brownouts. That is not a situation that we want to have, especially when it's below 0. Thank you.
Kirk, thank you for the question. I have been following vaguely the situation over in Scott County. Is it really going to fail next week?
Yes, there's been newspaper articles. There's enough supervisors said they're a no that it will.
And isn't there a state avenue for them to appeal?
It's kind of a nuclear option, but yes,
Okay.
can appeal for. I will go to the utility commission, apply for a generation certificate, and probably end up in court.
Okay. Because I hadn't been as familiar as I am with other state issues because it hadn't been brought to my plate yet, but I'm starting to follow along.
And the reality is the process is not even specific to that plant. It's a special use permitting process that would allow them to apply to put a facility up in Scott County, but it's the only bite at the apple that I think the supervisors get. So they're taking it to, I guess, put their stamp on it and disapproval. And there's a lot of, like I said, local folks there. And, you got the NIMBY thing. And I understand people don't like generation plants in their backyard, but they have to go somewhere.
Well, now that it sounds like it's going to be an issue on my plate, I'll definitely get myself more educated, but I'll just share my overall philosophy. We thankfully, thank goodness, are over a year away from administration that picked and chose energy sources based on ideological fringe groups as desires and hopes. And we now have an all above energy policy that I support: coal, nuclear, natural gas, solar, wind, all of it. But I also have a high level of importance to me that people's property is respected. And without eminent domain in this issue, it doesn't seem like that's something that's, I have not educated myself on it, but now that you've asked, I will.
Sure. So obviously, still Mark from Crossroads. There was allusion made to a special education bill that would give teachers the ability to, sort of take back their classroom and not have administrators make decisions about when students return. There's also a bill called HF 2218, and so that would mandate the use of video monitoring equipment in all special education programs. It does not include, unfortunately, a funding mechanism, so it would draw down on otherwise thin special education budgets. I would just like to caution, and maybe you all will speak to this, if those students are removed from the classrooms where they ostensibly receive support, where they might have access to applied behavior analysts or school therapists, those students don't disappear when they're removed from classrooms. They get sent home, they get sent to hospitals, and they enter a system that, eventually they become adults that we take care of. And if they don't have the support in schools, and if they are removed from classrooms sort of unilaterally, I'm afraid that it will put further stress on adult systems. And so just curious, if those students are removed, let's say, where do they go? What do we do? And what do we think the use of those cameras might be? And how should we pay for them?
I mean, with all due respect, we don't have the answer to those questions. I don't even know who the bill sponsor is. I don't know who's pushing it. I'm not sure where it came from. So I can't solve a problem that I don't know exists, but I will definitely commit to looking that up. And if you'd like to email me, I'd be happy to give you my personal response. With so many bills out there, when you all come up here and just say a number, oftentimes we don't know exactly what you're talking about. So I just want to make sure I can answer it intelligently.
Yeah, thank you for your question. I enjoy that immensely. What you didn't mention, are you in favor of video monitoring?
Well, the bill doesn't give intent. So if the intent is to gather evidence to, exact more punitive punishment for a student that likely has behavioral disturbances and other mental health issues, then probably not. If it is a mechanism to train the teachers to respond more effectively, or to do some post-vention and figure out how we could do this better, totally. Video does help. It also keeps paraprofessionals and teachers from engaging in otherwise unsupported behavior. And I'm not making accusations that is a rampant problem, but it does hold people accountable for how they respond. So I can't say that I swing one way or the other. I'd want to hear from the bill sponsor about what their intent is, but also want to make sure that it doesn't draw down from otherwise stretched resources.
Right. I greatly appreciate that explanation. I understand where you're coming from. I don't know the intent of the bill. I'm hearing it from you for the first time, so that they hear your opinion on it. That's what we're here for. So greatly appreciate that. When a student is removed from the classroom, it's a novel idea, but they go to the principal's office. And that's an appropriate place so they can reacclimate themselves, calm themselves down. And that's goes for the teacher also, so they have some time away. And that's why the teacher would determine when that child does come back into the classroom. There are safeguards built into my bill. I have an oversight panel of 2 teachers, 2 educators, and an admin to oversee what that teacher is doing. So one that protects the student from a teacher who may need to use a different tactic or something, but it also protects the teacher and educator and backs them up for removing a student that may not be in the appropriate learning environment at that time. So if it's an IEP student, perhaps an IEP should be looked at again to be rewritten to assist that student, because when a student is placed in the proper learning environment, they do thrive. And that's what this is an attempt to do.
Appreciate that.
Unfamiliar with the video monitoring bill, but just to piggyback off what Senator Grunhagen said, you have a right to an education, but you don't have a right to destroy everyone else's education around them. And I think what we're seeing is, and some of the time it's not the teacher's fault by any means, it's they don't have administration backing them up to remove these behaviors from the classroom. We have to have a process where we don't just let these behaviors destroy everyone's learning environment, right? But it's going to get complicated, and that's why we got to go through the committee process, because you have students on an IEP, you bring in federal regulations that are very hard to work around. And so that's why we're having to work through all these issues, because it's a complicated issue, but it is one that we have to address, because we're hearing from a number of teachers and constituents that this continues to be a problem. Thank you for your question.
Appreciate the response.
And I have a forum at 11, so I'm going to head right out. I just appreciate everybody coming this morning and engaging. If you have any follow-up questions, our emails are posted up here as well as on the legislative website. Thank you guys for being here this morning.
Yep. Thank you everyone for showing up and for the questions. It's been fantastic. I really enjoy the education questions. Please feel free to reach out with further concerns as stuff comes up. Like you said, video's a very fine line when you put something across, but it's that way with everything. It's a very fine line. So if there's something that's overlooked, if you have something to add on any topic, please do reach out via email. And thank you very much, everyone.
Well, I want to continue to thank you again to MCC for hosting us, and to all of you for all the excellent questions. Muscatine continually is one of my favorite forums. We get a wide variety of questions on all topics, and I greatly appreciate it, whether you agree with me or disagree with me. Still appreciate your presence. I am going to be repetitive in my closing comments because it's important. I hear all the time how partisan Des Moines is. That's false. Statistically speaking, anyone that says that is being dishonest, because out of the 4,000 to 5,000 bills that are introduced, only about 200 become law. And out of those 200 that become law, only about 180 of them are overwhelmingly bipartisan. Bills that pass 100 to 0, 95 to 5, 92 to 3, things like that. That is the overwhelming super majority of our work out in Des Moines. When we fight, of course, that makes the paper because that is what sells papers and it gets you clicks. But for anyone that tells you that your Republican trifecta is blindly partisan, they're being intentionally dishonest. It's statistically a fact that 92% of what we do is, in fact, not that. So I just appreciate all these questions. It's enjoyable to have such a wide variety of topics, and I will personally continue to use my guiding light. I think somebody asked how I arrive at decisions. I have obtained over the years a doctorate in common sense, and that's going to be my guiding light on all future decisions. So thank you for being here.